Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the boots of someone you've probably heard of, maybe even feared, but likely never envied a medieval executioner. You wake not in a castle, not in a cozy village cottage with ivy creeping up the walls, but in a modest, creaky chamber above a tanner's shop. The straw mattress smells faintly of smoke and old leather. The window is cracked open, just enough for a rooster's squawk to pierce through. You groan softly, not because you're tired though you are, but because today is your turn again. You've already heard the clink of iron from downstairs. Your tools wait where you left them, laid out neatly like some grim breakfast buffet. Axe, rope, a whetstone, worn thin from repetition. No one else touches them, not out of respect, of course, out of fear. Even the tanner's boy leaves a wide berth around your things, as though touching the axe might bring down a curse. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere strange or lovely, leave a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up slowly, bones cracking, just enough to remind you that this body, though feared by the townsfolk, is just flesh, like anyone else's. Your back aches a little more every week. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed, toes brushing cool stone. The first step each morning is the same: check the window. You squint into the gray-blue morning. The sky looks undecided clouds, curling like smoke above the rooftops. Rain, perhaps. Not ideal. Wet planks are slippery. A botched execution is more than just messy. It's shameful. And worse, it gives people something to whisper about for years. Historians still argue whether executioners were social outcasts by choice or by consequence. Some held land, even titles. Others couldn't marry, couldn't drink in town, couldn't even be buried inside church grounds. Your own role falls somewhere in the middle. You're paid. You're feared. And if someone breaks into your house, the sheriff will come, but he'll avoid eye contact the entire time. Downstairs, someone coughs. The tanner is already at his vats, stirring with long poles that clack against the edges. You won't eat yet, not before the tools are checked. You pull on a linen shirt, still damp from the last wash. Then the breeches. The leather apron hangs by the door, stiff and stained, smelling of oak bark and something older, something like iron and regret. You lift it over your head and let the weight settle onto your shoulders. It's oddly comforting, like armor or a confession you no longer fight. Beside it, your hood. You don't always wear it. Only when the condemned is someone with a family, or someone whose crimes have made them beloved. The hood protects anonymity. But more than that, it protects your quiet. See people project things onto you. Monster, devil. But under the hood, you don't have to be anything but breath and motion. Just hands. Just the job. You descend the stairs each footstep echoing on the stone. Your boots are thick-soled, hobnailed, not good for running, but then again, you never run. You step into the back room where your tools lie in wait. There's the axe, its broad blade wrapped in cloth. You unwrap it carefully, like a priest preparing a relic. It's sharp, always. But habit is sacred, and you lift it to the morning light to check. The edge catches a shimmer. You run the whetstone along it anyway, not to sharpen, to calm. Each scrape is a breath, a heartbeat. You're not afraid of the axe. You're afraid of what happens if it ever becomes routine. In the corner, the rope hangs like a lazy serpent. It's not needed today, not for hanging, but there are crowd lines to string up. Sometimes a man needs dragging. Sometimes a woman claws at the posts. You pack everything into the wooden crate, the one with iron corners and a deep gouge down one side. You don't remember how the gouge got there. Probably best you don't. On the wall, a list of names from the sheriff's last visit. Only one is marked for today. One is enough. Before stepping out, you reach for the vial on the shelf. Rose oil. A gift from a merchant's wife 3 winters ago. You dab a little onto your wrists, then onto the leather apron. It won't mask the scent of blood, but it might remind you that you were once a man who liked flowers. The air outside hits different when you're the one people whisper about. It's not just colder, it's thinner, like the town itself is holding its breath as you pass through. Cobblestones are still slick from last night's drizzle, and your boots make a soft crunching sound with each step. You don't rush. There's no need. No one expects the executioner to run. Running would imply nervousness or worse, eagerness. You walk at a deliberate pace, the wooden crate bumping against your leg, like an obedient dog. You pass the baker's shop first. Warm yeast and scorched flour fill the air. She's just pulling out the day's first loaves, and for a second, the smell almost makes you forget your destination. Almost. The baker's daughter glances up from sweeping the front step. She sees you and freezes. She always does. She's 16, maybe 17, with ash blonde hair, braided so tight you imagine it hurts a little. Her eyes linger on your apron, your crate, your face, just long enough to be obvious, just short enough to pretend she wasn't looking at all. You nod once. She doesn't nod back. The others do the same, watching, not watching. You've lived in this town for 6 years now. Long enough to know the names of most, but not to be invited to their weddings or their funerals. That's the strange part. You've been to more funerals than anyone in town. You've made them necessary. They think the job makes you different. You know better. It reveals what people want to ignore. Historians still argue whether executioners felt guilt or detachment, whether they believed in divine justice or just did the job because someone had to. Some left journals filled with scripture. Others scribbled curses. You don't write much, but you remember faces. You round the corner toward the town square, and the smell changes. No more bread. Now it's damp hay, spilled beer, something sour you don't try to place. The smell of justice, as the sheriff calls it, or the smell of spectacle. Either way, it's always there before the crowds arrive. You set the crate down near the scaffold steps. It's a low platform today. Nothing fancy, no gallows or trapdoors, just oak planks stained from older stories. You've asked them to sand it down before, to spare the new ones the ghosts of the old. They never do. You kneel beside the crate and begin laying out the tools. Cloth first, then the axe handle, gleaming oiled. You place it flat. Next, the smaller items, wedge rope, a strip of linen, just in case the condemned wants their eyes covered. You prefer they don't. It's easier when you can see where they're looking. A few coins fall onto the platform beside you. You glance up. It's old Mathis, one of the regulars. He believes tipping the executioner brings luck, or maybe wards off death. He always gives copper. Once he gave dried figs. You nod. He nods. Transaction complete. You've set the scene now. You stand and wipe your palms on your apron, more out of habit than anything. In the distance you hear the crier. He's mounted the pillory steps and begins shouting the sentence. Voice cracking. A little too much wine last night, probably. Or nerves. His job is to make things official, legal, public. Yours is to make them final. The name rings out. Thomas of Birkdale. You know the name. A petty thief turned con man turned something darker. The charges vary depending on who tells them. Some say fraud. Some say blasphemy. Some whisper murder. It doesn't really matter now. The town knows he's guilty. The town wants a show. And deep down, though, they'll never say it aloud. They want you to deliver it clean. One blow. No screams. No second cuts. They want their justice, but they want it tidy. You sip from the water flask tucked at your side. It tastes of old tin. You wet your lips anyway. Your heartbeat is slow. Always is, before the moment. You survey the square. Vendors are arriving now, those who've never known shame. Boiled sweets, smoked, meat pickled things on sticks. Children run ahead of their mothers, some too young to understand what today is, some too old to pretend they don't. You recognize one boy. He tried to sell you mushrooms once. You bought them though they were bruised. You never cooked them. But he smiled that day like he'd sold gold. Today he stares like you're a warlock. Someone tosses a cabbage. It misses. They're warming up. You tie the apron's belt tighter and shift your weight. You stretch your fingers behind your back, subtle, like a prayer. Then you check the blade again, not for sharpness, just for comfort. You place your hand on the platform rail, rough, with splinters and gouges. You always touch it once before the condemned arrives. A reminder. This is the line. Here is where the past ends. Beyond it, only what must be done. The sheriff approaches. He gives you a nod, brief, almost embarrassed. Then he gestures behind him. Thomas of Birkdale is coming. The condemned doesn't walk like you'd expect. Not slumped, not trembling, no dragging feet or muttered prayers. He walks upright almost casually, like he's stepping into a tavern where he knows half the faces. That unnerves you more than the ones who scream. Thomas of Birkdale has thick graying hair and a face lined by sun and secrets. His shirt is torn at the collar. He's missing a shoe. He looks like a man who spent more nights outside than in, and somehow still carries himself like he owns the square. They say he once posed as a bishop to scam tithes from a village. Another rumor says he married 3 women in 3 towns and never returned to any of them. The crimes on the official notice read fraud, theft, and public dishonor of the church. But public dishonor is vague and usually means he annoyed someone important. Historians still argue whether the medieval justice system aimed for fairness or just served as theater for power. You've seen both. Today feels like the latter. You step aside as the sheriff leads him to the platform. Thomas doesn't resist. His eyes scan the crowd with a faint grin like he's looking for someone specific. You notice the baker's daughter has come. She's behind her mother, half hidden, but definitely watching. She sees you see her. You nod barely. She doesn't nod back. Thomas is brought to the center. No chains, no gag, just rough rope binding his wrists in front. He moves like a man with nothing left to lose and something left to say. The sheriff announces the charges again, repeats the name, repeats the punishment. The crowd quiets, hungry for drama. You watch Thomas's shoulders, still upright. He turns to you and says softly, "Nice day for it, eh?" You raise an eyebrow. Not many talk to you like that. Not up here. You reply equally soft, "I've seen better." He smiles. "So have I." You offer him the linen strip. He waves it off. "Eyes open," he says. "Let him see." You nod once and step back to your position, 1 pace behind and slightly to the right. From here, your mark is the hollow of the neck just above the spine. The blade has to pass clean. It always has to pass clean. You reach for the axe, not rushed, not slow. The wood handle is warm from the sun, or your own nerves. You're not sure. You check the weight with a tiny motion. Left hand at the base, right hand near the head. The executioner's stance is odd feet apart, body squared, wrists loose. The sheriff steps aside. The clerk looks up. The crowd holds its breath. Thomas closes his eyes, then opens them again. He stares straight ahead. You wonder just briefly what he's thinking, then you stop, wondering. You focus. The wind shifts. Someone coughs in the back. You tighten your grip, raise the axe slowly, not high, not theatrical, just enough. Time slows, not for anyone else, just for you. You exhale once fully, then swing. There is a dull, thick sound, not like the clang of battle, but like chopping damp wood. The blade finds its mark. The body jerks once. The head falls with a muted thump. No scream. No second strike. Clean. The clerk marks it down. The crowd lets out the breath they didn't know they were holding. Someone cheers. Someone retches. The vendors start shouting again, louder this time, trying to blot out the silence with noise. Children laugh. Coins clatter. You stand still. Your hands ache now, not from the force, but from the grip. You set the axe down carefully, on the cloth, avoiding the stain, now spreading across the boards. It creeps like wine spilled in a church. You wipe your hands on the apron. Not clean, never clean. But ritual is comfort. You don't look at the head. You've learned not to. Instead, you scan the crowd again. Some have already left. Some linger. The baker's daughter is gone. The sheriff gives you a nod, businesslike. The clerk signs off. They talk to each other, never to you. You bend, pack your tools slowly. Axe, cloth, vial, wedge, rope. Each item returns to the box, like an absolution. You lift the crate. The square is still loud, but inside, everything's quiet. You take the long way back. Not because you're avoiding anyone, no one would dare stop you, but because the noise lingers on your skin like grease. The crowd's voices, the shrill pitch of children, weaving laughter through death, the cheer of someone who drank too much and mistook blood for justice, it all sticks. So, you cut through the tannery alley instead, narrow, slick, and shaded. Flies hum lazily around discarded scraps. Somewhere to your left, a rat scuttles between barrels. This path smells worse, but feels quieter. It's where you can breathe. The crate digs into your hip with every step. You shift it now and then, but you won't put it down. That would mean stopping, and stopping means thinking. At the far end of the alley, a familiar face waits. Brother Aldrich, young for a monk too serious for his age. He stands with hands folded in front of his robe, a small leather satchel slung across his shoulder. He nods as you approach, eyes not quite meeting yours. I prayed for him, he says. Good, you reply. He didn't ask for it, but I did it anyway. Most of them don't. He frowns, then glances at the crate. You still carry your own tools. You look at him, evenly. Would you let someone else handle your prayers, Touche? He gives a sheepish nod. Historians still argue whether the church saw executioners as instruments of divine will or as necessary evil. Depends on the town, the priest, the politics. Brother Aldrich seems torn, half ready to offer absolution, half ready to step back in horror. He tries again. You could come by the chapel tonight. Wash, pray. Leave it there if you want. You don't answer immediately. It's not that you don't believe, but belief doesn't dull the sound the axe makes. Not the real sound. Not the one in your dreams. I'll think on it, you say. He nods, hands still folded. You pass him without more words. Your lodgings are 2 streets over. The square behind you is muffled. Now, its noise filtered through stone and distance. The front door creaks as you enter. The tanner isn't home. Or if he is, he's hiding. You leave the crate by the hearth and go to the basin. It's cold water. Always is. The copper bowl is dented and streaked with green from age. You strip the apron, pull your shirt over your head, and wash. Slowly. The blood isn't visible, not really. But it's there, always is. You scrub until your knuckles hurt. Then you sit. The silence of the room is thick, almost heavy. You can hear the wind pushing against the shutters, a few voices from the street. One cartwheel creaks, a dog barks, and under it all your breath, steady, even. You stare at the fire grate. No fire, just old ash. You reach down and stir it with a finger. Something tiny and black crumbles into dust. You brush it away. There's a knock. You don't answer. A pause. Another knock. You sigh and rise, half expecting a summons. Another name. Another favor. But it's not the sheriff. It's a boy. Maybe 9 years old. Bare feet, oversized shirt, a bruise on his cheek, like spilled wine. He holds a bundle in both arms, rough linen wrapped clumsily, something inside it, clinking. You open the door, wider. He thrusts the bundle at you without a word, then turns and bolts before you can speak. His footsteps vanish into the alley. You bring the bundle in. Inside, you find something strange. Bread, a folded piece of cloth, a coin, and a tiny wooden carving, clumsy but detailed, of an axe. You blink. Is it a gift, a warning, a joke? Historians have found tokens like this in old homes, objects left for protection, luck, or remembrance. This one is crude but sincere. You wrap it again, set it on the shelf beside the rose oil and sit. The light is changing now. Evening blue, soft shadows stretching across the stone. You close your eyes for just a moment, and in that moment you hear Thomas of Birkdale's voice again. Let 'em see. You wonder if they did. Sleep doesn't come easy. It never does on execution days. You lie in bed, the straw poking through the sheet, your limbs heavy, but your mind wide awake. Outside the village breathes its ordinary night sounds, dogs barking in the distance, shutters slapping gently against their frames, someone clanking around in a tavern kitchen, too late for comfort. You know these rhythms. They've been your background music for years, but the quiet isn't really quiet. Not inside your head. You hear the swing of the axe again, over and over, not because it went wrong, but because it didn't. Because it was too clean. Because the crowd loved it. The part no one talks about is how executioners remember the ones that went well just as clearly as the ones that didn't. They stick to your ribs like guilt made out of silence. You finally sit up. No use pretending. The candle is nearly burned down. You light another. You're not afraid of the dark, but it feels like the dark watches you too closely. You find yourself thinking about Thomas again. Not the sentence, not the blow, but the way he smiled. The way he looked out at the crowd, not with fear, but with something else. Defiance, maybe, or knowing, or something more dangerous, understanding. You wonder if he knew something you didn't. Historians still argue whether condemned criminals in the Middle Ages truly feared death, or found strange relief in it, an end to hunger, to filth, to shame. You've seen men cry, You've seen women curse the sky. You've seen children too stunned to speak. And then you've seen men like Thomas. You open the wooden box at your feet, the one you keep for old things. Not tools, not letters, just relics. Inside is a piece of cord, a stone bead, a broken tooth, and now the little carved axe the boy brought you. You turn it over in your hand. The edges are rough. The handle is uneven. But the care is obvious. Someone spent time on this. Someone thought you'd want it. Someone thought you needed it. You don't know what's stranger, that they were right, or that you agree. The next morning arrives with pale light and distant bells. You wash your face and wrap your hands before heading to the hall. Not for work, just for presence. They expect you to show up now and then, part of maintaining the balance. The spectacle can't function if the blade becomes invisible. The hall is already full of murmurs. You step inside and the voices drop half a tone. You nod to the clerk. You nod to the guards. You don't nod to the ones who look away. In the corner, a scribe is reading out a new list. Petty crimes, repeat offenders, a goat stolen, a wall defaced with paint. The word heresy is used twice, but without conviction. It's early yet. They're still deciding who matters. You don't stay long. As you step back into the street, someone bumps you harder than necessary. You turn. It's a woman in traveling robes, older, weathered. Her face is sharp, her mouth tight. Justice, she asks. Just that word, bitter and jagged. You don't answer. She spits at your feet. You watch the spit sink into the mud. She walks on. You don't stop her. That's part of the job, too. You walk toward the edge of town where the fields begin and the smell of soil replaces the stink of people. The fog is lifting tendrils of it, drifting off the ground like steam. You hear a bird. Just one. It doesn't stay long. This far out you can think. You sit on the old tree stump near the ditch. You rest the little wooden axe on your knee, and you wait for nothing in particular. But you wait. By midday, you return to the square. Not because you have to, but because part of you wants to see what's left behind. Execution sites have strange afterlives. The crowd disappears. The laughter fades. But something lingers in the boards, in the stains, in the air. It's quiet now. The scaffold stands like a forgotten altar. No guards, no onlookers. Just a few crows, hopping near the edges, pecking at what might be crumbs, or something less innocent. You climb the steps slowly, feeling the slight give in each board. The wood was new once years ago, when you were too. Now both of you creak when pressure hits the right spot. The rope's been taken down, the axe cleaned, but a trace of blood darkens the center plank. You crouch and trace a finger through the dried arc, not touching, just observing. It's a part of your record now. You remember every spot, like a cartographer, of pain. There's a shadow near the base. You don't flinch. It's just a boy again. Not the one with the bundle, this one's younger. 6, maybe 7. Hair like straw tunic. 2 big eyes. Too curious. You the man who did it? He asks plainly. You look down at him. What do you think you ask back? He shrugs. Papa says you make people behave. You nod slowly. Sometimes. Did he scream? No. Did he bleed? You tilt your head. Everyone does. He kicks a stone. Papa says you get paid in silver, sometimes in copper. Papa says you got no soul. That one lands. You smile, not kindly. Tell your papa to say it to my face. The boy blinks, then grins like it's a game. I will. He runs off. You exhale through your nose. Historians still argue whether executioners were feared or pitied more. Judging by the boy's reaction, maybe it's both. Maybe it always was. You sit for a while at the edge of the scaffold. The sun warms the back of your neck. The wood under you is splintery, but familiar. It's the same place you stood yesterday, and the day before, and the week before that. You remember your first, not the first death, the first swing. They told you it would be heavy, but they meant the blade. They didn't warn you that your knees would shake, or that your mouth would taste like pennies, or that your vision would narrow to a pinhole just before the axe made contact. They didn't warn you that afterward people would stop looking at you the same way. Even people who once kissed you, shared bread with you, called you friend. It was a clean job, but everything changed. There's a name for people like you now. Headsman, executioner, sometimes Lord of the Square if the speaker's drunk or sarcastic. No one uses your real name anymore. You haven't heard it out loud in months. The last time was from your sister. She wrote a letter, said she was moving west, said it was too hard being related to someone like you, said she hoped you understood. You did. You never wrote back. Back at your lodging, the crate waits by the hearth. You unpack it with the care of a ritual. The cloth is stained but folded. The axe is clean. You run a whetstone across the edge, not because it needs it, but because it soothes your hands to do something useful. You pause midway. The little wooden axe still sits on the shelf next to the cracked glass bottle of rose oil and a bundle of dried herbs someone once told you would keep the spirits away. You don't believe in spirits. You believe in weight, in splinters, in the smell of old rope, in the exact moment a body goes still. But still, you leave the herbs where they are. The knock on your door this time is gentle, not a child, not the sheriff. It's the baker's daughter. She stands holding a small loaf wrapped in cloth, her hair braided, eyes wide but steady. You say nothing. She doesn't offer the bread, just holds it. Then I saw you blink. You raise an eyebrow. Did I? She nods. Right before the axe fell. You say nothing. She steps forward. I've seen 6 executions. This was the first time the man smiled. You nod slowly. She finally offers the bread. You take it. She doesn't say thank you, and you don't say you're welcome. She leaves. The loaf is warm. You sit by the window, holding the loaf of bread like it's something sacred. It's small, dense, crusted, with ash around the bottom from where it kissed the oven floor. Still warm, still soft. still human, in a way few things in your life are anymore. You tear a piece off. The crumb clings to your fingers. It's the first thing all day that doesn't taste like metal. Outside the square, yawns open again. The scaffold's frame cuts against the sky like a scar that never healed right. The boards will dry soon, but not entirely. There's always something left. Wood remembers, and so do you. You return to the platform after dusk, not because you want to, but because something keeps pulling you there, like gravity made of memory. You don't bring the axe. You don't bring the apron. You don't need anything but your footsteps. The moon is low glowing behind the chapel roof. It casts long shadows across the ground. The platform looks different at night. Smaller, sadder, like a makeshift stage after the players have gone and all that remains is a forgotten script. You sit on the edge again. You listen. Nothing. No wind. No voices. No rats. Just silence. It presses in around you, thick and watchful. You imagine Thomas again, his face, his voice, the way he said, "Let him see." You think about how his neck tensed just before the blow. Not fear. Bracing, like someone jumping into cold water. And you remember something you rarely let yourself admit. You flinched. Just a little. Just once. But it happened. Historians still debate whether executioners developed psychological habits to cope: detachment, ritual, alcohol. You use all three, but they don't erase everything. You rise and trace a hand along the beam where the rope was tied. The grain is smooth from wear, grooved by repetition, stained by history. There are marks here, tiny notches like someone tried to count. You never noticed them before. Maybe another headsman carved them. Maybe you did. You don't remember. Back in your room, the candles burned low again. You unwrap the cloth from the bread and fold it into a neat square. You place it in the box beside the child's axe. Keepsakes, maybe, or evidence. You lie down without undressing. The bed creaks. The ceiling flickers in amber light. And then you dream. You're in the square, but no one's there. The scaffold is gone. Just the ground cracked and dry. The wind blows, but it doesn't carry sound, only dust. You stand alone, no axe, no apron, just yourself, and you're the one kneeling. A shadow looms. You look up. The crowd is watching, but their faces are blank. One child blinks. It's the boy from before. He points. You flinched. You wake up, sweating, breath caught, fingers curled as if gripping something that isn't there. Dawn hasn't arrived yet, but the birds have. You sit up and stretch your hands, flex your shoulders. The weight you carry isn't on your back, it's under your ribs. You dress slowly. No jobs today, no summons, no crowd. But you clean the axe anyway. The edge is smooth, not even a burr. The handle fits your palm perfectly. You remember when it didn't, when it blistered your skin, when you cursed it in your sleep. Now it feels like an extension of your arm. You oil the wood, you polish the blade, you wrap it in cloth and return it to the crate. Done. For now. The town wakes slowly. Carts begin to roll. Doors open and close. Someone shouts across a yard. Laughter follows. They forget fast. That's the trick. You envy it. They bring you their guilt in the morning and their forgetting in the afternoon. You carry both. The sun has barely cleared the chapel roof when you step out again. The air smells faintly of dew and yesterday's ash. You're not headed anywhere in particular. Not today. No announcements, no scaffold set up, no sharpening required. But your feet take you toward the outskirts of town. Anyway, past the smith's shop, past the inn, where nobody meets your eyes, anymore past the chapel, where the bell swings lazily, even when no one's inside to pull the rope. You cross the market square. The stalls are only half filled. You pass a butcher arranging his hooks. He sees you. He nods tight and reluctant, like he's acknowledging both kinship and revulsion. You're both dealers in flesh, after all, but only one of you gets paid to end a life. You turn down a narrow alley, boots scuffing on cobblestones. The buildings lean inward here, whispering secrets through cracked shutters. It's quieter. This is where you go when you don't want to be noticed, though of course you still are. A child peeks from behind a curtain. You pause. She disappears, then comes back. She's missing a front tooth and clutching a rag doll with a missing arm. Do you hurt people every day? She asks. The question is so small, so unfiltered, you almost forget to answer. No, you say finally, not every day. Do they cry? Sometimes. She frowns. Do you? Now that one well that lands, more than it should. You glance at your boots. Not on the outside, you reply. She nods once like that's a reasonable answer and retreats. Children always ask the hardest questions. They have no sense of performance yet, just curiosity and the kind of honesty adults forget how to use. You walk on. At the end of the alley is a door you've knocked on only twice before. The herbalist, widow. Her garden smells like rosemary and smoke. You pause, then knock once. A pause. Then the door creaks open. She stands with her hands covered in ash and flour. Another dream. You nod. She lets you in. Inside her home smells of root cellar and old paper. There are bundles of drying herbs above the hearth, a chipped bowl of dried apple slices on the table. You sit. She doesn't ask what you saw, only whether you slept. Some you say. She ladles something into a clay mug. Hot, bitter, tastes like bark. You drink anyway. Same dream, she asks, mostly. Did you flinch again? You look at her. She always gets to the heart of it, faster than you like. Yes. She nods. That means you're still human. You exhale slowly. Doesn't always feel like it. Then you're still more human than most. She doesn't charge you for the drink. Never has. Historians still argue whether executioners were permitted spiritual counsel in medieval towns. Some say they were denied holy rites, altogether considered tainted. Others believe a few were secretly welcomed into the homes of healers, grave diggers, or even priests, those who lived close to death themselves. You leave her with a nod. By noon, you're back in your room. You open the crate. This time it's not to clean or polish. It's to prepare. The sheriff came by while you were out. Left a message. Another sentence has been passed. 2 men, a hanging and a beheading. Different offenses, same conclusion. You light a candle and sit beside your tools. There's a rhythm to this part, like a priest laying out vestments. The black apron, the hood, the gloves, the cloth for cleaning, the whetstone, the axe. You move with practiced hands, but your breath stays steady, focused, precise. Each item has its place. Each part has its role. The hood goes on last. It always does. Not because of superstition, because it's the moment everything shifts. Under the hood, you stop being a man. You become a role, a symbol, a necessity. You once tried performing without it years ago, when you thought your face might offer mercy. It didn't. The crowd was louder. The condemned was more terrified. You saw your own reflection in a puddle afterward and didn't recognize the man looking back. The hood stays. You walk to the square again. It's late afternoon now, and the wood creaks beneath your boots. You check the beam, the rope. You swing it once, testing the weight. Then the axe gliding through air like it remembers every neck it's met. You rehearse the path, not out of doubt, out of respect. The crowd is already forming. They don't speak your name, but they speak of you. They point. They nudge each other. Some smirk. A few avert their gaze. A man waves a roasted onion on a stick. Someone drops a coin. A girl with braids clutches her mother's sleeve and stares. You don't react. You don't have to. You've done this enough, but you still see it all. The guards lead the condemned forward. The first is a man of 50, maybe older, weathered. He doesn't speak, doesn't beg, just walks like a man already halfway gone. The noose awaits him. You check the tension. You nod once. The sheriff reads the sentence. The man says nothing. You pull the lever. It's clean. Too clean. The crowd barely blinks. And then comes the second. You recognize this one. He's young. Too young. You remember when he was a boy stealing apples from the cart behind the tavern? Now he's here for something larger. Murder, they said. You look into his eyes. He recognizes you, too. There's no defiance, no plea, just a soft nod like a strange sort of gratitude. You raise the axe. Time dilates again. The blade feels weightless. You inhale. Then, silence. The blade arcs catching a sliver of sun. It cuts through the air like it belongs there, silent, final, inevitable. And then contact. A moment of resistance, a shift in weight. The body collapses like a curtain being dropped after the final act. You don't breathe until after it's over. The crowd lets out a single exhale, as if they'd all been holding their breath too. Then the noise returns. Someone claps. Someone spits. One woman crosses herself so violently her fingers blur. You step back from the block. The assistant, someone newer, someone you barely speak to, moves in to cover the body. He works quickly, but without looking at the head. He still can't. You remember when that was you. The blood seeps slowly across the plank. You've seen it. Pools spray, dribble, soak. You know every way blood behaves under pressure. This one's quiet, unhurried, as if the body knew it had time. You peel off the gloves. You do it with care, precision, ritual. You found that ending the act with calm hands keeps something inside you from breaking. Historians still argue whether executioners felt remorse, whether they came home and drank themselves blind or wept alone behind locked doors, whether they slept soundly or begged for nightmares to stop. You don't weep. You don't drink, at least not for this. But you do remember. Every single one. Faces, names, smells. Some men you forget in an hour. Others, they stay with you for years. You walk off the scaffold, still hooded. The crowd parts. You hear murmurs. That was fast. He didn't flinch. Reckon he even cares. But no one addresses you directly. They never do. Back in your room, you sit with the axe still in hand. The cloth is ready. The whetstone, too. But you don't start. Not yet. Instead, you stare at your reflection in the blade. It's curved and warped. You don't look like yourself. You haven't in years. You wonder what your sister would say if she saw you now. You wonder what you'd say. Eventually, you clean the blade. The blood comes off in streaks, some darker than others. You sharpen it not because it's dull, but because you need to. Because it's what comes next. Because routine is your salvation. And then you sit. You light a candle. You wait. There's no knock tonight. No bread. No child. No questions. Just you and the silence. You lie on the bed, but sleep doesn't come right away. Your body is tired. Your bones ache in the way only repetition can cause. But your mind keeps looping, rewinding today, pausing in strange places. The look in the young man's eyes, the way his knees didn't shake, the slight tilt of his head before the end, as if he knew, as if he accepted it. You think about how he nodded, like a goodbye. You've never hated your job, but sometimes you wish you didn't have to be the last thing someone sees. In the early morning, you wake from a half-dream. You don't remember the images, only the feeling, weightless, floating, falling. You sit up and breathe, in, out, in, out. The crate sits by the wall, closed again, waiting, always waiting. You dress without thought, tunic, belt, boots, You splash your face, run a hand through your hair. No mirror, you don't need one. You know what you look like, and that's enough. Outside, the town stirs. You pass a boy, chasing a chicken, a woman hanging laundry, a dog tied to a post barking at leaves. It's a world full of motion, life. And you are the stillness between acts, the breath before the fall. You stop by the chapel, not to pray, just to sit. The benches are worn. The wood smells of dust and wax. The priest doesn't speak to you. He never has. But you sit in the same pew every time. The one near the back under the cracked window that lets in a shaft of light shaped like a sword. You close your eyes. You listen. Nothing. Just silence. But it's enough. You don't expect visitors. Not really. So, when there's a knock, gentle measured and far too polite for this town, you're already suspicious. You rise from the bench in the chapel, boots creaking on the stone floor, and make your way out the side entrance. But the knock comes again before you even get halfway home. You open your door to find a man, dressed in deep crimson robes, too clean for this part of town. His hands are clasped in front of him. His expression is smooth, too smooth, the kind that's practiced. "May I come in?" he asks, like your neighbors, like this is an ordinary social call. You step aside without speaking. He doesn't sit, just stands there, scanning the room like he's taking inventory of your sins. "I'm here on behalf of the bishop," he says. "He's requested a private execution. That's not entirely uncommon, but it's also not entirely legal." "Why, you ask?" The man smiles slightly. The condemned is a knight, disgraced. Public spectacle would draw unwanted commentary. You nod once. A private execution. No crowd, no scaffolding. Just you, a blade, and a man who once served a king. "You've done worse." "Tomorrow," the man says, "at dawn, at the old chapel on the hill." He leaves as suddenly as he appeared. You don't ask his name. He doesn't offer it. Historians still argue whether special executions like these were recorded or buried. Some say high-status deaths were given quiet dignity. Others argue that secrecy was used to erase scandal. You suspect both are true. That night, you sharpen the axe again, not because it's dull, but because you need the rhythm, the rasp of stone against metal, the hiss of cloth as you wipe the edge, the quiet promise it carries. You wrap the blade and leave it by the door. You don't sleep much. The chapel on the hill is older than memory. The roof sags. The door sticks. Ivy chokes the outer walls. But inside, the air is still, heavy, holy. The night is already there. He kneels, not bound, not afraid, just resigned. You recognize him, not by name but by posture. He once trained boys in swordsmanship in the square. His back is still straight even now. "I always knew it might end like this," he says. You say nothing. He looks over his shoulder. Do it cleanly. You do. It's quiet. Even the birds don't sing yet. You wrap the body in linen. You leave it on the altar. The man in crimson will handle the rest. Back home the crate waits. You clean the blade. You burn the cloth. You sit for a long time after staring at the morning sun filtering through your window. You feel something shift. Not guilt. Not sadness. Something quieter. Weariness, maybe. You spend the afternoon walking the town's edge. You pass the orchard, where children throw stones at trees to knock down fruit. A girl offers you an apple. It's bruised, but sweet. You sit on a fallen log and eat in silence. Later, at the market, someone leaves a bundle of bread and dried herbs at your door. No note, no coin, just kindness. You don't cry, but your hands shake a little. You light a candle. You stare at the flame until it dances. You lie down with your boots still on. And when you sleep, you dream of a stage without an audience, a blade with no weight, a world without roles. You wake before the birds. That part is normal now. Your body is used to the silence before dawn. You rise without thinking, pulling on your tunic, belting it by feel, washing your face in cold water that stings you awake better than any prayer. Today's different, though. No name, no notice, no scaffold. But you feel it in your chest, a kind of pressure, like something is about to change or already has, and you just haven't caught up. You head into town anyway, not for work, just to see. The town square is quiet. The stalls are only just being set up. A man sweeps dust off his doorstep with tired strokes, and you watch it drift into the morning air like flour in a bakery. No one greets you, but no one recoils either. That's new. You walk past the fountain where children once dared each other to stick a toe into freezing water in winter. Past the apothecary, where they say the potions are made of frog spit and moonlight. Past the blacksmith who always hammers like he's angry. He nods at you today. That's also new. You stop at the chapel again out of habit. Sit in your usual pew. The sun creeps through the high window in long golden bars. You think of the night, the weight of his silence, the way he didn't tremble. Historians still argue whether medieval executioners had a say in who they executed. Most likely they didn't. You are a blade, not a judge, a shadow of justice, not its source. And yet every now and then it weighs heavier when the condemned stares into your eyes like they understand something you don't. You light a candle, just one. It flickers like it knows you're watching. That afternoon, a messenger arrives at your door, young, nervous, holding a wax-sealed letter with trembling fingers. You take it without speaking. The seal is unfamiliar, a rose wrapped in a chain. You break it, inside a request, not for execution, for instruction. They want you to teach someone, to pass it on. You laugh out loud so loud it startles the candle on your table. Pass this on. You reread it. Yes, they're serious. The town council has decided it's time to name an apprentice. You're getting older. They need continuity, stability, a clean executioner's office, as they call it, as if this were a craft like woodworking or soap making. You fold the letter and tuck it into your belt. You walk for hours, through the trees outside town, past the chapel on the hill, past the graves. You think about what it means to teach someone this life, to train hands that will one day hold the axe you carry now. Would they be softer than yours? Kinder, more cruel? You sit under a tree that's beginning to lose its leaves. You remember the first time you held the blade. It was heavier than expected, not just in weight. You remember the first face, the first crowd, the first night afterward, lying awake and trying not to hear the sound again. You don't want to give that to someone else, but maybe you must. You return home in darkness. You open the crate again. The blade gleams. You wonder if it feels tired too. You take out the cloth and polish it, not because it needs it, but because you do. You set out another candle, a second mug, a second chair. Tomorrow you will meet them, the one who comes next, and you'll try somehow to explain what this job truly is. Not just how to swing, but how to carry the silence afterward. You don't expect much when they arrive. Maybe a farmer's son with strong arms. Maybe a petty criminal trying to earn redemption. Maybe someone naive enough to think this is just another job that pays in coin and power. But instead, it's a girl, barely old enough to drink tall, quiet eyes like cold river water, sharp and unreadable. She introduces herself plainly, her name unremarkable, her voice even. I was told to learn from you. You say nothing, just gesture to the stool across the table. She sits. No questions, no pleasantries, just silence. It stretches, thick, unbending. Eventually, you rise, open the crate, show her the axe. She doesn't flinch, not even when you place it between you on the table like a third person. You point to the blade. Touch it. She does. Her fingers move along the grain of the wood over the metal edge. Respectful, curious, unafraid. You nod once. That's enough for now. Historians still argue whether female executioners existed during the medieval period. The records are sparse, but a few names, widows, wives of headsmen, and one supposed Red Lady of Rouen, emerge from dusty ledgers and whispered folklore. Most likely, they were rare. But you know rarity doesn't mean impossibility. You hand her a cloth. Clean it. She obeys without hesitation. Her movements are slow, careful. She works like someone used to chores that demand precision, peeling apples without waste, stitching hems that must hold through winter. You don't speak much that day, but she listens to everything. She watches how you store the blade, how you touch the wood like it's something alive, how you sit afterward, not relieved, not afraid, just still. The next day she returns, earlier than asked, carries her own stool, brings you bread, doesn't explain where it came from, just tears it in half and hands you a piece. You accept it. It's good. You sit together on the doorstep, eating in silence, watching the town move in slow rhythms, a cart full of turnips, a pair of lovers arguing over socks, a cat with no tail chasing a chicken twice its size. You say, "Why do you want this?" She chews, swallows, wipes her hands on her skirt. "My father owed money. They gave me a choice. Prison or this." Ah, you nod. Not uncommon. Still cruel. But her eyes are steady. Her hands don't shake. You say, "You can leave." She shakes her head. "I've already stayed." That night you show her the block. The real one. Stained with memory, cracked with use. You don't make her touch it, but she does. Lays her hand flat across the wood like she's feeling for heat. You show her where to stand, where to aim, where not to hesitate. People think this is about strength, you tell her, but it's not. It's about finality. She nods. You hand her a stick. Swing. She does. Terribly. You chuckle. She doesn't. You say, "Good." The next swing is better. Not perfect, but better. Progress. Back in the house, you light 2 candles now, one for each of you. She notices, says nothing. You say, "Tomorrow we clean the scaffold." She says, "Yes." No questions, no fear, just readiness. You wonder if she'll last. You hope she doesn't. But part of you knows. She just might. The scaffold groans underfoot as you climb it again, this time not alone. She follows behind you, step for step, never asking if it's safe. The wood is old, soaked through by rain, dried out by summer, cracked and re-nailed more times than you care to count. You gesture to the edge. She walks to it, looks down at the square. It's empty now, just scattered leaves and the faint scuff marks of last week's market. Imagine it full, you say, packed, shoulder to shoulder. Some come for justice, some for the thrill, some to eat bread and pretend they're watching a play. She nods, doesn't speak. You hand her a bucket. Start there. She scrubs the platform as if she's trying to erase something, though neither of you say what. You work beside her. 2 figures under a pale sky, cleaning away blood that has long since dried into the grain of the wood. Do you ever hear them after she asks, not looking at you? You don't answer right away. Not because you don't know, but because the truth sounds stranger when spoken aloud. Sometimes you admit, usually in dreams, but sometimes when it's quiet, not voices, just wait. She nods, as if that makes perfect sense. Historians still argue whether executioners were haunted more by the act or by the people who cheered. Some claim the worst part wasn't the blade, but the applause. You show her where to place her feet when it's time, how to align the angle, how not to lift the axe too high or let her arms strain. It's not about fury, you say. It's about precision. The square remains empty, but you both feel the ghosts watching. That evening she stays longer than usual, sits by the fire you didn't intend to build, but somehow did. She sharpens the practice blade without you asking. Her motions are already cleaner, more confident, but her eyes stay distant. "What if I can't do it?" she asks suddenly. You glance at her. "You mean, what if you miss?" She shakes her head. "No, I mean, what if I do it and I can?" That stops you. You set your mug down. That's the real fear, isn't it? Not failure, but success. You say, then you'll have to decide if that's something you can live with. She doesn't reply. Just keeps sharpening. The next day, you give her a test. A log, round and thick. You set it on the block. Tie a melon on top. Treat it like a neck, you say. Swing once. She takes position, lifts the blade, breathes, and brings it down in one clean, perfect arc. The melon splits. The log barely wobbles. You exhale through your nose. She blinks, steps back, drops the axe, her hands shake. You pick it up, wipe the blade, return it to the crate. "She was 16, she says quietly. "The first person I ever watched die. She stole a ring." You nod, not because it's okay, but because it's true. Later that night, she doesn't come back. You sit alone. One candle. No second mug. You don't blame her. You sharpen the blade anyway. The next morning you open the door and find her standing there. No words, just a loaf of bread and a silent look that says, "I'm still here." You don't ask why she came back. You never do. Instead, you hand her the practice axe again. No words. She takes it without hesitation. She's steadier today. You can see it in her spine, the way her fingers grip the handle, not too tight, not too loose. Controlled, focused. The sun's just risen, a pale smear across the sky, like someone forgot to clean the slate of night properly. The square is still empty, but the silence isn't heavy. It's expectant. You walk together side by side down the back road to the old training yard. Once a courtyard for militia drills, now mostly weeds and forgotten memories. You like it here. No one comes. Not anymore. You set up another melon, this time on a taller stump closer to real height. She doesn't wait for instruction, just steps up, raises the blade, and swings. It lands clean. Too clean. You watch her pause after blade still in hand and breathe, like she just realized what she's done. She had red hair, she says. You blink. She's not talking about the melon. She smiled at me, she continues, right before it happened, like she knew I'd be watching. You nod slowly. You remember her, you say. She wasn't supposed to die, she adds. That part you don't answer, because the truth is, most of them weren't supposed to. The justice system, if you can call it that, is as much theater as law. Who lives and who dies often depends on things far above your reach: coin reputation, rumor, the timing of a whisper. You're the blade, not the verdict. But she already knows that. You see it in her eyes. Still, you remind her. This job isn't about right and wrong, you say. It's about carrying out what's been decided. And if what's decided is wrong, you let that hang. Historians still argue whether medieval executioners had any form of moral autonomy. Some were said to refuse certain jobs, vanish before a hanging, or botch an execution on purpose to send a message. Others carried on with robotic precision. There's little consensus, only speculation. You pick up a second axe, not the real one, but heavier than her practice blade. You swing beside her, not to show off, just to teach rhythm. You move together. Swing, pause, breathe, reset, swing again. It becomes almost like prayer, a grim hypnotic ritual under a gray sky. Afterwards, you both sit on the log at the edge of the clearing. The grass sways and a beetle climbs the bark beside your boot, like it owns the world. She asks, "Did you have a teacher?" You shake your head. "No, just a crate and a letter." She considers this. "And your first time?" You smile, faint tired, messy. She waits. You don't elaborate. Eventually you rise. Back at your place, you set 2 mugs again. Pour hot water over dried herbs. She drinks slowly, eyes on the flickering candle. It's quieter tonight than usual. She asks, "Do you ever wonder what they say about you?" You raise an eyebrow. "Who the people in town? The ones who watch, but never speak." You lean back. "Of course. But it doesn't change anything." She stirs her tea. "I heard one of the butcher's boys call you Shadow Father." You chuckle. "Better than Demon of the Square, I suppose." She smirks. "There's worse." And she's right. There always is. That night you dream of bells. Not funeral ones. Not wedding either. Just bells ringing endlessly in a wind that never stops. When you wake, your hands ache. You stare at them for a while, like they don't belong to you. The next few days pass in quiet repetition. She returns each morning, sharpens, cleans, practices. You test her with stories. "This one stole a chicken," you say one afternoon, pointing to a stump. She nods. "And this one killed 3 men in a tavern fight." She swings. "And this one," you leave it blank. She hesitates. "Did nothing." You nod. "Would you still swing?" She doesn't answer. Just swings anyway. The melon splits. She breathes heavy. You say, "Good." Not because it is, but because she needs to hear it. You don't know if she'll stay, if she'll become what you are, or if one morning she'll simply vanish like so many before her, leave behind only the memory of effort and a blade that waits for another hand. But something has shifted. The silence is softer now. Not absence, not fear, just space. A space where something new might grow. That evening you hand her the key to the crate. She doesn't open it, just holds it, looks at you. No words. You nod. She leaves it on the table and walks out into the night. But you know she'll return, not because she must, but because she chose to. The next morning she returns before sunrise. You're already awake, sitting on the steps with a mug of bitter root tea, watching fog roll low across the cobbled streets. Her boots crunch softly on the gravel path. She doesn't knock, doesn't announce herself, You slide the mug toward her. She sits beside you and drinks. Neither of you says good morning. There are no good mornings in this trade. You ask, why come so early? She shrugs. Couldn't sleep. You nod. You will. Eventually. You'll sleep too hard one day and dream of nothing. She doesn't look convinced. You sip. There's a trial today, a real one. The first she'll witness not from memory or rumor, but from the wooden platform itself. You tell her the details on the walk. A man accused of stealing sacred relics. Not bread, not coin. Something worse, apparently. They say he broke into the abbey and took pieces of a saint's cloak. She asks, was it valuable? You reply, not in coin, but in story very. Her brows furrow, but stories can't buy food. You smirk, no, but they can get you killed. Historians still argue whether relic thefts were really about piety, desperation, or political theater. Many believe monks staged them to stir fear and tighten control. Others think poor men simply sought whatever scraps they could sell. Either way, someone always paid. The town square is already filling by the time you arrive. Children scramble for spots at the front. Vendors hawk sweet cakes and cider. An old woman is selling flower crowns for reasons that feel wildly inappropriate and somehow deeply human. You lead her up the scaffold. The wood creaks under both your weight. She steps to her marked place, breathes. You watch her scan the crowd. Her face is unreadable, but her knuckles are white around the rail. The bishop reads the sentence aloud, voice clear, slow and soaked in ritual. The crowd reacts on cue, murmurs, gasps, one solitary cheer that gets quickly silenced by a glare. The condemned man is led out, thin, middle-aged, hair like wet straw. He walks with effort, but his eyes are sharp. You can tell even from this distance that he knows exactly what today is. He looks up at the platform, sees her, not you, her, and he smiles, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. She flinches, only slightly, but you see it. The guards move him into place. The bishop signals. You nod toward her. She steps forward. The axe waits, wrapped, resting. She unwraps it slowly. No theatrics, no sweeping gesture, just work, like gutting a fish or sewing a hem. She walks behind him, places a hand on his shoulder, steadies him. The crowd hushes. Then he speaks, softly, but you hear it. So does she. I'm not afraid. Neither is she. She raises the axe. You hold your breath. She swings. It lands clean. No second stroke, no stumble, no spectacle, just silence. Heavy, full, complete. The guards clear the body. Someone in the crowd begins to cry. Not loudly. Just one woman, hand to mouth, eyes wide. She drops her flower crown. It rolls toward the scaffold. You look at your apprentice. Her hands tremble, but she stands tall. You say nothing. Words would only shake her more. Back at your place, she washes the axe in silence. The blood stains the basin, faint pink. She scrubs until her fingers prune. Then she dries it, wraps it, places it back in the crate. She sits at the table for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she says, "I didn't want to do it." You say, "But you did." She nods, takes a shaky breath. It felt like everything I'd practiced was fake, until it wasn't. You don't answer. There's no comfort in this room, only truth. Later that night, she lights her own candle. Not yours, hers. She sets it near the window, lets it burn low. You watch her from the corner of your eye. Not as a teacher, not as a judge, but as someone who's walked that same path, barefoot, blind, and unwilling. She doesn't cry, but her eyes glisten. You say, "It gets easier." She shakes her head. "I hope not." And somehow that's the most comforting thing either of you has said all day. The next morning, you find her already outside, splitting firewood. Not for training, just for heat. Her swing is practiced now, measured, even deliberate. There's no anger in it, no wildness, only rhythm. You watch for a while. She doesn't speak, neither do you. Eventually, she stops, wipes her brow, and offers a small nod. You return it. Inside the hearth is warm. Breakfast is simple porridge with a few dried berries, hard-crusted bread. She eats slowly, her thoughts elsewhere, chewing not just the food, but whatever's gnawed its way into her mind since yesterday. You know that look. It's the one you wore for months after your first execution. That odd, bitter flavor behind the teeth. Not guilt, not quite grief, something murkier. You did well, you offer. She swallows, but doesn't meet your gaze. It didn't feel good. You nod. It's not supposed to. She pushes her bowl away. Then why do it? A familiar question, one you once asked your teacher, who never answered. So now, you try. Because someone always will. Better it be someone who hesitates. She doesn't reply. You both sit in silence. The rest of the day passes with small tasks, sharpening, sweeping, mending the cloak you wear in public to keep the sun off your neck and the stink of the job from clinging too close to your skin. She helps patch a seam without being asked. She's learned to notice. That evening, a knock on the door. Rare. You open it to find a guard, young, out of breath, clutching a sealed letter with trembling hands. You break the seal. A name, a date, and one sentence. Carry it out before the market opens. Another, execution. Tomorrow morning. Fast. No trial. No crowd. She sees your face. Asks, "What is it?" You hand her the paper. She reads, then looks up. It's an order. You nod. No public spectacle. No ceremony. Why you shrug? Probably someone important. Historians still argue whether quiet executions were for political reasons, religious discretion, or simply to avoid unrest. Some say the condemned were often innocent too, connected too loud, too clever to be dealt with openly. You lay out the tools for the morning, sharpen the blade yourself. This isn't one she'll do, not yet. This one's yours. But you let her watch. She deserves to see the other side, the quick-shadowed end of justice where names vanish from records and only the stain on the wood remains. She asks no questions, just helps you pack. Before dawn, you walk the alley behind the keep. The stones are wet, the air thick with fog. You can hear the condemned breathing before you even see them. A man, hooded, kneeling already. He doesn't beg, doesn't speak. One of the guards nods. You raise the blade, swing, clean. The guards take the body. Nothing is said, nothing is written. By mid-morning, the square is full of bread carts and laughing children again. She asks, "What was his name?" You say, "Does it matter?" She scowls. Of course it matters. You look at her, hold the gaze. Say, "Then you remember him." That night she writes something. You don't read it. You never ask. But the next morning, the parchment is gone, tucked into her satchel. Some kind of tribute, perhaps. Or maybe just a reminder not to let forgetting become too easy. A few days pass. Then another letter. This one is different. It's addressed to her, not you. She opens it with shaking fingers. It's from the magistrate. He's requested her for an official position, assistant executioner. It's ceremonial at first, a title, but one with meaning. You watch her read it 3 times, then fold it slowly. She doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just breathes. She says, "What do I say?" You answer, "Only what's true." She sits with the paper a long while, then pens a reply. 3 sentences, straightforward, formal, accepted. That night she sets the kettle herself, lights the fire, and when you sit down, she says, "You trained me." You raise your mug to the last person who asked. She chuckles, only once, but it's real. The wind is cold that night, but the house is warm, and for once you both sleep deeply, without dreams. A week later, she wears the black cloak for the first time. It's not quite hers. It was once yours, and before that someone else's. But today, it fits. She stands before the cracked mirror by the hearth, adjusting the hood, pulling it forward just enough to shadow her eyes. The fabric hangs awkwardly. She tugs it higher, at the shoulder, smooths the fold at her chest. Her face is calm, too calm. You remember that look? The one you wore the first time you stopped being a bystander and became the hand. She turns toward you, says nothing. You nod. You both know what comes next. There's another sentence, this one public. A widow accused of poisoning her landlord. The trial was swift, too swift. Witnesses were shaky, evidence thin, but the verdict was loud. She's to be executed at noon. You arrive early as always. The crowd gathers faster this time. Word spreads quickly when a woman is to be executed. Some come out of curiosity, others out of cruelty, and a few simply because it's the closest thing to theater they'll ever see. Vendors are already calling out over the murmurs. Hot cider, spiced nuts, paper fans as if the crowd needs comfort for what they're about to witness. The condemned arrives last. She walks with surprising grace, her hands bound but head held high. She meets your apprentice's eyes. They lock, just for a moment. It's enough. Your apprentice flinches, but doesn't break. She steps forward, unwraps the axe. Not the practice one, the real thing, the one that hums with memory. The woman kneels. She speaks one sentence. She was his wife. I just brought the herbs, that's it. Then silence. You wait for your apprentice to look at you. She doesn't. She raises the axe and swings. Clean. True. The crowd gasps, then cheers. You watch her face. It doesn't change, but her shoulders sag just slightly when she wraps the axe again. The crowd begins to disperse. Children laugh. A vendor starts singing. The square forgets as quickly as it gathered, but you don't. She doesn't. Back home, she sets the axe down, gently. Doesn't speak. Just goes to the basin and begins to wash. The blood takes longer to lift this time. She scrubs harder. You say she was telling the truth. She stops. I know. And that's all. There's no comfort, no relief. Just acknowledgement. Later that night, you find her writing again. Not in a letter this time, but in a small book. Leather-bound pages, rough and uneven. It's old, found maybe in your pile of cast-offs. She's recording names, dates, sentences, and what they said, those last odd, often quiet words people think don't matter. She's keeping them, one by one, as if remembering might be the only justice left. You don't interrupt. You sit by the fire. Watch the shadows crawl up the walls. Outside, a dog howls once, then silence. She says, I want to do better than this. You glance up. At what? She closes the book softly. At forgetting. Historians still argue whether executioners kept records of their own. Most official documents listed only names and methods, rarely the words or the humanity behind them. But fragments have surfaced lists, prayers, letters, never sent. You've never written anything down. Until now. You pull a second book from the drawer, blank, dusty. She watches, then smiles barely. You dip the quill and begin. Name, date, circumstance. Then a sentence. She walked with grace. You pass the book to her. She reads it, then writes underneath, and she deserved better. You both sit in silence, letting the ink dry. And somewhere between the pages, between the names and the weight of the blade, something lighter takes root. Not peace, not yet, but something close, like the first breath after a long underwater silence. The next, summons comes wrapped in red wax. That's rare. Red means royal, or close to it. You read the name and feel your stomach drop. He was a knight once landed honored, the kind of man people bowed to in the street. Accused now of treason, heresy, and something vague that smells like politics. Your apprentice leans over your shoulder, reads the name aloud, then stares at it. He's from here. You nod. Yes. Grew up 3 streets over. She whispers, I saw him once when I was a girl. He gave me a coin. You remember stories like that? Golden stories, clean, shining things from a world where men like that didn't end up in chains. But the world never really worked like that, did it? She says, why would they have us do it? Because you reply, he must vanish, and people must watch it happen. The execution is set for 2 days from now. Plenty of time to prepare, not enough to forget. That night, she sharpens the axe again, slow, careful strokes, like brushing knots from hair. She speaks while working her voice quiet. What if he doesn't beg? You smile without warmth. Then you cut clean and quickly. And if he does, you pause. Same answer. She doesn't laugh. The day arrives gray and windless. No birds, no bells. The scaffold has been scrubbed until the boards almost glow. Someone added garlands, fresh ivy, twined with black ribbon. Ceremony, not mercy. The crowd is dressed well today. Nobles in cloaks, merchants with gold rings, even 2 priests in red. You spot a painter, a scribe, witnesses who will commit this moment to memory or mold it into myth. He arrives last, not dragged. He walks. No guards on either side, only behind. His hands are bound in silk, not rope. He carries himself like a man still half in control. Your apprentice watches him closely. She says, he's not afraid. You reply, no, just waiting. He mounts the scaffold steps himself, looks you in the eye, then turns to her. You must be the girl with the coin. She freezes, then nods. He kneels, offers no defense. Just this, history forgets cowards. And then he closes his eyes. Your apprentice doesn't move. She stares at the back of his neck, at the thick braid of silver and black hair. Her fingers tighten on the axe, but she waits. Looks at you. You nod. And then she swings, hard. The blade lands, not perfectly, but enough. A second stroke follows sharp, clean. He falls forward. The silk-wrapped hands collapse in his lap. The crowd erupts, not in joy, in silence. An enormous, consuming quiet. You've never heard a square so still, the wind doesn't even blow. Your apprentice wipes the blade, wraps it, hands shaking. She whispers, it wasn't clean. You say it was fast. She nods, but her eyes fill. She doesn't cry, but she writes that night, for hours, page after page. You don't ask what she writes, but you know, stories the world won't keep, names that will vanish unless someone speaks them once more softly aloud when no one else is listening. That night she leaves the candle burning on purpose, lets the wax spill down the table. She doesn't sleep. Neither do you. The next morning you find a bundle on the doorstep. Bread, cheese, a note for the ones who must remember. Historians still argue whether executioners were hated, feared, or honored. The truth, as always, is blurrier. But some in their own small ways were thanked. She tucks the food away and says nothing, just gets back to work. The axe must always be sharp. The names must always be written. You realize then she's not your apprentice anymore. She's something else, something steadier. And the silence in the house, it doesn't feel empty. It feels full, like a pause between breaths. Spring creeps in slowly, like a cat through tall grass. The markets smell of apples again. Children play stickball in the alley. The mayor's wife is scandalized by someone's new haircut. Life returns casually, impolitely, with no regard for the blood recently washed off the execution platform. But your apprentice, your partner, now hasn't slowed down. She maintains the records, sharpens the blades, tends the cloaks. She even begins mending the execution block itself, smoothing the grooves left by dozens of final moments. People greet her on the street now. Not warmly, but not with fear either. There's recognition in their nods, something that looks like respect, or at least a wary acceptance that she belongs here. One afternoon you pass a vendor with wood carvings for sale. Among the saints and kings and angels, there's one figure off to the side, a hooded woman with an axe across her back. Your partner sees it, stares, then walks away. Later, she says nothing, but you know, immortalized in cheap pine. Maybe that's how legacy works. The next execution is postponed twice. You don't ask why. When it finally arrives, it's mundane, some poor soul who stole silverware from a noble's estate. Barely a dozen people watch. She handles it alone. You don't even leave the house. You sit by the fire, reading from the records when the door opens and she steps in, calm, unbothered, as if she's returning from the grocer, not the scaffold. You say, "Was it clean?" She replies, "Clean and kind." And that's it. Later that week, a letter arrives. It's not from the magistrate. It's from another town across the hills. They've heard of her, heard of both of you. They need someone discreet, steady, professional. You read the letter 3 times before passing it across the table. She reads it once, then asks, "Would you come with me?" You raise an eyebrow. "I thought you didn't need me anymore." She shrugs. "I don't, but maybe I want to." And for the first time in years, you laugh. A real one. Historians still argue whether executioners move towns to avoid the weight of familiarity, or simply because they outgrew their reputations. You pack together. The blades are oiled, the cloaks folded, the ledger tucked away, heavy with memory. As you close the door for the last time, she lingers on the threshold, looks back, then closes it gently. The new town is smaller, quieter, less corrupt maybe, but still in need of someone to do the necessary work. Your first day there, no one greets you, no one spits either. That's a victory. You unpack slowly, set the kettle, hang your cloaks on a shared peg. The house is smaller, but the roof doesn't leak, and the hearth is warm. She takes her book from the satchel, writes the new address on the inside cover, then adds a name, one that hasn't yet been sentenced, just remembered. You say, "What if you stop needing the axe someday?" She closes the book, says, "Then I'll use the quill." You stare into the fire together. It pops once, then settles. Outside, the wind carries laughter from the inn down the lane. You don't listen to the words. You listen to the sound. The ordinary, untroubled rhythm of a town that does not yet know you, but soon will. And maybe, just maybe, they won't fear you, not right away, but eventually. They'll understand. It's been 3 months in the new town, and so far there hasn't been a single execution, not even a trial worth your time. Your cloaks hang untouched. The axe remains tucked beneath the floorboards, wrapped in its cloth, the handle polished but unused. The scaffold, freshly built by the town carpenter, stands awkwardly in the square, still pristine like a stage, waiting for its first scene. Your partner doesn't mind. She tends the garden, teaches a few children their letters, fixes the local baker's door when it sticks. No one asks what she used to do, but some of them know. And they don't ask because they're afraid of what the answer might sound like in the quiet. You catch her sometimes writing in the book, still adding names, not from this place, from the old one. She says memory doesn't need an audience, just a witness. You believe her. You've taken up carving. Small things, animals mostly, and a tiny figure of a woman in a cloak with an axe slung over her shoulder. She laughs when you show her, says, "Too pretty. You made her look like a story." You reply, "Aren't you?" The next week a letter arrives. Not an order, a request. A girl 12 years old has been accused of theft. A silver pin. No trial yet, but the council asks if you might come observe. Quietly. She goes, watches from the back of the hall, says nothing. Later that night she returns with the pin in her hand and the girl's name on her lips. She didn't take it, she says. It fell under a cart. You nod. She doesn't add the name to the book, because not all stories need to end. Historians still argue whether executioners ever saved lives, whether their presence, silent, visible, dissuaded cruelty, or simply reminded towns of consequences. You think sometimes the knowledge of what could happen is enough. The days grow longer. Spring becomes summer. Your partner teaches the baker's boy to read Roman numerals. You help the innkeeper carry crates. The scaffold in the square remains untouched. Grass grows at its base. One morning you find a bouquet resting on its steps. Not a message, not a threat, just flowers. Perhaps it means something, perhaps not, but you leave them there. By evening they've wilted in the sun. Still, it felt like something. One night, as the lanterns glow low and the fire settles into embers, your partner speaks. "I think I'm done." You look up. At the job, she shakes her head. At letting it define me. You sit together for a long time listening to the crackle of the log. No scaffold, no axe, just two people, a quiet home, a book of names, and the hum of a town that never had to see what you once were. The night is warm, the windows are open, the air smells like thyme and bread and rain on dust. You exhale and lean back and let it be. And now, as the final embers flicker low and the weight of the night settles gently upon your shoulders, you let your breath slow. No more crowds, no more cloaks. Just the soft hush of a home that doesn't ask you to explain where you've been or why you sometimes wake before dawn, still listening for a bell that no longer rings. The axe is quiet now. The book remains on its shelf. And the names, those heavy echoing names, are not forgotten, but no longer shout. They murmur. They sleep. You stretch your legs under the worn quilt, feeling the soft pull of gravity ease you down. Maybe you hear the whisper of a breeze through the open window. Maybe it's just the memory of one. Either way, it's peaceful. You are not what they feared. You never were. And even if the world never quite understood what you carried or how you carried it, that's okay. Because you did. And you still do. The town doesn't know your story, but they don't need to. They know your garden, your warm bread, your smile when the milk is too warm to drink. They know enough. And for now, for this quiet, candle-lit, nothing needs doing kind of night that's everything. So close your eyes. Let the quiet take you. Let the scaffold fade. Let the book close. Sleep well. Sleep deep. Sleep free.